My wife said she was heading out for a weekend with friends. 2 days later, my phone rang. A coworker told me to check social media. My wife was smiling in someone else's photos, nowhere near a campsite. I didn't argue. I didn't call her. I prepared. When she came home on Monday, still cheerful, she had no idea what waited next, and where she'd end up standing. Before I tell you how everything unraveled, take a second to support stories like this. Follow the channel and drop a comment about where you're watching from. It helps these stories reach the people who need them most. My name is Evan Mercer. I'm 36 years old, and I manage large construction projects for Stonebridge Development in Riverview, Missouri. I've been married to Lila for 8 years. Or at least, I thought I was married. I'll be back Monday evening. Don't wait up, she said that Friday morning, kissing my cheek like it was just another routine goodbye. She was heading out for one of her girls' weekends, something she'd been doing twice a month for almost half a year. Same story every time. Same 3 friends. Same hiking boots, same duffel bag, same bright smile that never quite reached her eyes anymore. Have fun, I told her as she loaded her car. We will. No signal out there anyway, she laughed. Jessica picked a great spot. Jessica. Meredith. Claire. The names had become so familiar that I never questioned them anymore. I stood on the porch and waved as she drove away. The house felt too quiet after that. Not lonely, wrong. Like something had been removed that shouldn't have been. I tried to distract myself with a game on TV. Didn't work. My thoughts kept circling small things I'd ignored for months. Why her camping boots never looked worn. Why her clothes never smelled like smoke. Why she'd started doing laundry separately. Why she'd bought a second phone for work emergencies that never rang. Trust makes you explain away things that should stop you cold. Saturday morning, I cleaned out the garage. Organizing tools always helped clear my head. Around 10, I got a text from Lila. Beautiful morning. About to hit the trails. No photo. She used to send dozens. Sunsets. Campfires. Group selfies. That had stopped months ago. I told myself I was being paranoid. 8 years of marriage meant something. People change. Hobbies change. I repeated those thoughts until they almost sounded believable. Then my phone rang. It was Mark Doyle, a guy I'd worked with on several concrete jobs over the years. Not dramatic. Not nosy. When Mark called, it was usually for a reason. Evan, he said slowly, we need to talk. My hand stopped moving. What's wrong? I think you should look at something. I'll text you the link. The message came through seconds later. I opened it. And my entire understanding of my life cracked open. The link led to a public social media profile belonging to Ryan Holt, a subcontractor I recognized from Mark's crew. The first photo loaded slowly. It was Lila. Not hiking. Not camping. Not anywhere near the woods. She was standing on the deck of a lakeside cabin, a glass of wine in her hand, Ryan's arm wrapped comfortably around her waist. The caption read, "Nothing beats a quiet weekend away." I scrolled. Another photo. Them cooking together in a modern kitchen. Another, kissing in front of the sunset. Another, walking barefoot along a private shoreline. The location was tagged clearly, Clearwater Lake Resort. The timestamps ran from Friday evening to Sunday morning. Every girls' weekend, 4 months lined up perfectly. I didn't yell. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't feel the heat people talk about when betrayal hits. I felt something colder. Something steady. I screenshotted everything. Every photo. Every caption. Every comment congratulating them on their romantic escape. I saved dates, times, locations. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was a system. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, realizing my wife had been living an entirely separate life, and performing this one flawlessly in between. Then I did something most people don't. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her. I didn't warn her. Instead, I started preparing. I cross-checked credit card statements. Hotel charges where campground fees should have been. Cash withdrawals that matched her trip schedule. A phone plan I didn't recognize, registered under her maiden name. By Sunday afternoon, I knew enough to understand one thing clearly. If she could lie this well for this long, I needed to assume there was more I didn't know yet. So I went to the source of the lie. I drove to Jessica's apartment. She answered the door looking genuinely confused to see me. "Evan? Is everything okay?" "I just wanted to ask about the camping trips," I said calmly. Her face went blank. "Camping trips? The ones you've been organizing. Twice a month. For almost 6 months." Jessica laughed once, then stopped when she saw my expression. "Evan? I hate camping. I haven't been in years." The rest came out slowly. Meredith had moved out of state. Claire had been recovering from surgery. None of them had gone anywhere with Lila. Jessica swallowed hard. She asked me once if she could use my name for something. Said it was a surprise. I didn't think. That was the moment the last doubt died. Lila hadn't just cheated. She had built a fictional world to support it. And she had underestimated one thing. She assumed I would react emotionally. She was wrong. By the time I drove home, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was focused. Because Lila was coming back Monday evening, expecting the same man she'd left behind. And that man no longer existed. I didn't sleep much Sunday night. Not because I was anxious, but because my brain wouldn't stop assembling pieces. Once you see the full picture, it's impossible to unsee the gaps you ignored for months. Every strange behavior, every vague answer, every time I'd chosen trust over instinct came back with new meaning. Lila thought she had time. She thought she had control. She was wrong on both counts. Early Monday morning, I called in sick. I'd accumulated enough leave that no one questioned it. I spent the first hour documenting everything properly, screenshots printed, files backed up to 2 separate drives, timestamps noted. I wasn't acting out of anger. I was building a record. Then I made the call that mattered most. Grant Holloway, a family law attorney my older brother had used years earlier, answered on the second ring. I need to file, I said. And I need to do it today. He didn't ask why. Just asked what evidence I had. Photos, locations, financial records, and proof the story she's been telling doesn't exist. There was a pause. Be in my office at 9. By the time I arrived, Grant already had coffee waiting. He reviewed everything in silence, scrolling, flipping pages, cross-checking dates. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. This isn't impulsive behavior, he said. This is calculated. That's what scared me. Good, he replied. Fear keeps you careful. Kansas law didn't require proof of infidelity to end a marriage, but deception at this level changed leverage. It shifted asset division. It erased negotiation power. Grant leaned back. We file immediately. And before she gets home, we secure the house. Legally, I said. Completely. By noon, paperwork was filed. By 1, a locksmith was scheduled. By 2, the house, my house, was no longer accessible with her keys. I didn't feel cruel doing it. I felt clear. While packing her belongings, I discovered how deep the second life went. A spare suitcase hidden behind coats. Jewelry I'd never seen. Receipts tucked into an old notebook. A second checking account statement folded into a cosmetics bag. She hadn't just lied about where she went. She'd been planning an exit. There were emails too. I shouldn't have looked, but at that point, ignorance felt irresponsible. Threads with Ryan stretched back 8 months. Longer than the camping trips. Before the lies even needed a cover story. One line burned itself into my memory. Evan is steady. Useful. I'll leave when it benefits me. I printed that email last. By late afternoon, Grant called to confirm something else. Ryan's married, he said. His wife already knows. The photos had done their job faster than either of us expected. 2 marriages collapsing under the weight of the same lies. I arranged Lila's belongings neatly on the porch. Not out of kindness, out of control. I photographed everything. Documented placement. No room for accusations later. At 6:30, her car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as she sat inside for a moment, probably rehearsing the version of the weekend she planned to tell me. I wondered how many times she'd practiced it already. She stepped out smiling. Then she saw the porch. Confusion flickered. Then panic. What is this? She demanded, reaching for the door. The locks have been changed, I said calmly, opening it just enough to hand her the papers. She stared at them. What are you doing? I saw the photos, I replied. All of them. Her face drained of color. Those don't show. They show enough. She tried to step forward. I didn't move. This isn't a conversation, I said. It's a conclusion. For the first time in 8 years, she didn't have a script ready. Her phone buzzed in her hand. I already knew why. The truth had caught up to both of them at the same time. And this was only the beginning. Lila didn't leave right away. She stood on the porch for several minutes, staring at the boxes like they might rearrange themselves if she waited long enough. Her phone kept buzzing. She ignored it at first, then finally answered. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know who it was. Ryan. Her voice dropped. Sharp. Panicked. The tone people use when a plan collapses faster than expected. I closed the door and locked it. Not to punish her, but to protect myself from the part of me that still wanted answers I already had. Through the window, I watched her pace, gesturing wildly, shaking her head. At one point, she looked straight at the house like she expected me to be watching. I was. Eventually, she loaded her things back into the car. Not all of them. Just what she could carry. The rest sat neatly on the porch, untouched. When she drove away, I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. The house was quiet again, but this time, it didn't feel wrong. It felt honest. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without waking up replaying conversations in my head. No imaginary arguments. No rehearsed explanations. Just stillness. The next morning, the messages started. Emails. Missed calls. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Lila trying different angles like keys on a ring. We need to talk. This isn't what it looks like. Ryan means nothing. You're overreacting. I made a mistake. Mistakes don't require spreadsheets and backup lies. I forwarded everything to Grant and didn't respond. 2 days later, the first legal response arrived. Her attorney requested mediation. Claimed emotional distress. Claimed misunderstandings. Suggested reconciliation discussions. Grant laughed when he read it. She's testing the waters, he said. Seeing if you'll blink. I won't. I know. The financial review uncovered more than I expected. Trips billed as camping expenses that were actually resorts. Cash withdrawals timed perfectly with hotel stays. A shared account I'd never authorized opened with Ryan 3 months earlier. Grant leaned forward. She was planning to leave you broke. That was the moment anger finally surfaced, but it didn't explode. It sharpened. Meanwhile, the other fallout spread quietly. Ryan lost his job within a week. His employer cited conduct incompatible with company values. His wife filed immediately and froze their accounts. His social media vanished overnight, but screenshots don't disappear. Lila moved into a short-term rental across town. I knew because Grant's office received the address for service. The place was smaller. Temporary. Nothing like the home she'd helped design with me. We never spoke directly. Everything went through lawyers. The mediation happened 3 weeks later. We sat across from each other in a neutral office, a long table between us like a border neither of us could cross. She looked different. Tired. Defensive. The confidence she'd worn so easily for months had cracked. I never meant to hurt you, she said softly. Grant slid a folder across the table. Intent isn't the issue, he said. Documentation is. The room went quiet as the mediator reviewed the contents. Photos. Emails. Financial records. Timelines. Lila's attorney tried to interrupt. Tried to reframe. Tried to minimize. It didn't work. When mediation ended, the terms were clear. The house stayed with me. The majority of assets stayed with me. She walked away with what she could reasonably claim as personal property, and nothing more. No dramatic outbursts. No courtroom spectacle. Just consequences. After it was finalized, I sat alone in the house and walked through every room. I noticed things I'd stopped seeing years ago. Sunlight through the kitchen window. The sound of the floorboards. The space. I didn't rush to fill it. I spent time rebuilding, not just financially, but mentally. I returned to routines I'd abandoned. Morning workouts. Weekend projects. Dinner with friends I'd drifted away from without realizing it. People asked questions. I answered honestly, but briefly. She wasn't who I thought she was. That was enough. One afternoon, weeks later, I ran into Jessica at a grocery store. She looked relieved to see me. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. I had no idea. I know, I replied. And I believe you. She hesitated. She called me after everything fell apart. Asked if I could help her explain things. And? I told her no. Lies don't need support. I thanked her and walked away feeling lighter than I had in months. The strangest part was how quickly my instincts returned. The clarity. The ability to trust my own judgment again. I realized something important during that time. The betrayal hurt, but doubting myself hurt more. And I had stopped doing that. By the end of the month, I replaced the locks again, not because I needed to, but because it felt symbolic. A clean reset. Lila tried once more to contact me directly. A handwritten note slipped under the door. Apologies. Regrets. Promises she wished she'd made sooner. I didn't read past the first paragraph. Some chapters don't need revisiting. What surprised me most was how fast her other life collapsed once it was exposed. The fantasy required secrecy to survive. Without it, there was nothing left to hold it together. Ryan disappeared from the picture completely. And Lila was left alone with the reality she'd built. As for me, I didn't rush into anything new. I learned to enjoy peace. And that peace would soon be tested again, when something unexpected surfaced that neither of us had planned for. Something that would make the fallout impossible to ignore. And when it did, there would be no pretending left. The thing about lies is that they don't just fall apart once. They keep unraveling. About 6 weeks after the mediation, when I thought the worst was behind me, Grant called me early in the morning. I need you to sit down before I say this, he said. I already was. Your name came up in another filing. My stomach tightened, not fear, not panic, just readiness. Ryan's wife is pushing for a deeper financial review, Grant continued. And some of the transactions overlap with accounts you were still legally tied to during the marriage. I closed my eyes. Meaning? Meaning Lila didn't just lie to you. She may have crossed into fraud. That word changes everything. Grant explained it slowly. During the months Lila had been running her double life, she'd moved money in ways that weren't just unethical, they were potentially illegal. Funds pulled from joint savings and rerouted through accounts opened under variations of her name. Charges disguised as household expenses that were actually covering hotel stays, gifts, even partial rent on Ryan's place. None of it had been obvious while we were married. She'd always handled finances efficiently. Quietly. I'd trusted that. Trust, I learned, is the easiest tool to weaponize. The court ordered a forensic review. That's when the silence broke. Lila started calling again, not me, but Grant's office. Daily. Sometimes hourly. Her calm apologies were gone, replaced by urgency and anger. She says you're trying to ruin her life, Grant told me. I didn't file anything, I replied. I know. But the truth has momentum once it starts. The review took weeks. I wasn't required to attend, but I followed every update closely. The deeper they went, the worse it looked. Not just one affair. Not just one lie. A pattern of manipulation that touched money, people, and time itself. Ryan's wife filed an amended claim. Lila was named. Her attorney withdrew 2 days later. That was when she showed up at the house. I wasn't expecting it. I heard the knock just after sunset, soft at first, then louder, more desperate. I didn't open the door. Evan, she called. Please. I just need to talk. I stood on the other side of the door, my hand resting against the wood. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was done. I know you're in there, she said. I'm not here to fight. I stayed silent. They're saying things, she continued. Things that aren't true. That almost made me laugh. Ryan's wife is lying, she said quickly. She's twisting everything. I spoke then. Come. Even. They're using bank records, Lila. Not stories. The silence on the other side of the door stretched long and thin. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. But it did. I just wanted more. And you chose lies to get it. She slid down against the door. I could hear it. The soft thud. The quiet sobs. For a moment, just one, I remembered the woman I thought I married. The plans. The paint-stained weekends. The life I believed we were building. Then I remembered the spreadsheets. The emails. The sentence that still echoed in my mind. Evan is useful. I stepped back from the door. This conversation is over, I said. You should leave. She didn't argue. She stood, wiped her face, and walked away. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. The legal consequences moved faster after that. The court ruled she had to reimburse funds improperly taken during the marriage. The amount wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to hurt. Enough to limit her options. Enough to end the illusion that she could walk away untouched. Ryan fared worse. His settlement cost him nearly everything he'd built. His reputation followed him longer than the paperwork did. And Lila? She faded. She changed numbers. Moved again. Took a lower-paying job in a different part of the state. People stopped returning her messages. Invitations dried up. Not because I said anything. Because the truth doesn't need marketing. As for me, life didn't magically improve overnight. Healing is quieter than destruction. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in small ways. Sleeping through the night. Trusting your instincts again. Not flinching when your phone buzzes. I started traveling more for work. Took on bigger projects. Focused on building things that stayed standing. I met someone new, not right away, not recklessly. Someone honest. Someone who didn't need rehearsed stories or backup phones. But even without that, I would have been fine. Because the most important thing I rebuilt wasn't my life. It was my sense of self. Still, there was one final development I didn't see coming. One last consequence that closed the circle completely. And when it arrived, it proved something I'd learned the hard way. When someone builds their life on deception, the collapse doesn't end, it finishes. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry or heartbroken, but because my mind was finally quiet enough to notice how long I'd been living inside someone else's fiction. The house felt different once Vanessa's belongings were packed. Not empty, honest. Every room looked the same, but something false had been stripped out, like bad wiring pulled from the walls. By morning, reality started moving faster than emotion ever could. Harrison called at 8:12 a.m. The papers had been officially filed and processed. Service was scheduled for late afternoon, timed precisely for when Vanessa would be home. No chance for her to spin a story first. No chance to control the narrative. I'd learned from watching her how dangerous first impressions could be. Be prepared for denial, Harrison warned. Then bargaining. Then anger. Sometimes all in the same sentence. I thanked him and hung up. The truth was, I wasn't thinking about Vanessa anymore. I was thinking about what came next. I took the day off work, something I hadn't done in years without a clear reason. I walked through the house with a notebook, documenting everything: furniture, appliances, renovations I'd paid for, receipts filed neatly in a binder she'd never opened. 8 years of shared life reduced to line items and proof. Around noon, Joe called again. Samuel's wife, Patricia, wanted to talk. We met at a quiet coffee shop near downtown. She looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't cried yet but was dangerously close. She slid her phone across the table without saying a word. Screenshots. Messages. Plans. Lies that mirrored my own discovery so closely it felt rehearsed. He told me it was business travel, she said finally. Lake properties, clients, investors. I even helped him pack. I nodded. I understood that humiliation too well. We didn't talk about Vanessa or Samuel much after that. We talked about logistics. Attorneys. Finances. How quickly trust can rot when exposed to light. By the time we stood to leave, we weren't bonded by anger, we were bonded by clarity. That afternoon, I received 3 messages from Vanessa. The first was casual. On my way home. Traffic's awful. The second carried irritation. Why isn't the garage door opening? The third came 10 minutes later. Josh, what is going on? I didn't reply. At 6:03 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the living room window as she stepped out, still wearing the confident posture of someone who believed she was in control. She smiled automatically when she saw the porch, then stopped. Confusion. Recognition. Fear. She dropped the keys. I opened the door before she knocked. What is this? She demanded, gesturing at her belongings. You know exactly what it is, I said calmly. She laughed once, sharp and forced. This isn't funny. Neither was 8 months of lying, but I didn't say that. I held up my phone instead, scrolling slowly through the screenshots. The deck. The wine glasses. The lake behind her eyes. Her face drained of color. You went through my things, she said weakly. You went through my life, I replied. This was public. She stepped forward, reaching for the door handle. It didn't move. You changed the locks? Legally. She finally looked at the papers in my other hand. Josh, we can talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about. She sank onto the porch step like gravity had finally found her. It didn't mean anything, she whispered. It was just different. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. Harrison had been right. Samuel's wife filed today, I said. Same evidence. Her head snapped up. What? He documented everything for attention. You documented nothing because you assumed I wouldn't look. She cried then. Not softly. Loud, messy, panicked. The sound of someone losing control of a story they'd rehearsed too long. I waited until she slowed. You use people as props, I said. Friends. Family. Me. I never meant to hurt you. That's worse, I replied. You just didn't care. The process server arrived 10 minutes later. Efficient. Professional. Impersonal. Vanessa signed the acknowledgement with shaking hands. When it was done, she stood up slowly. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my responsibility anymore. She looked at the house one last time. The house she hadn't really lived in for months. Then she loaded her things into the car and drove away without another word. I closed the door and locked it behind her. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without questioning what was real. But the consequences were only beginning. Over the next weeks, everything she'd carefully balanced collapsed under scrutiny. Financial records didn't align with her stories. Expenses contradicted her claims. Harrison uncovered withdrawals and credit charges that painted a clear picture of premeditation, not impulse. Her attorney tried intimidation first. Then sympathy. Then silence. None of it worked. At work, rumors surfaced, but they didn't touch me the way they touched her. Truth travels slower than lies, but it travels farther. Especially when evidence walks beside it. Samuel was fired 2 weeks later. His company cited conduct violations tied to public behavior. The same photos that made him feel bold had branded him unreliable. Vanessa lost her job quietly. No announcement. No scandal. Just an email stating her services were no longer required. The irony didn't escape me. By the time the preliminary settlement conference arrived, she looked like someone who hadn't slept in months. Smaller. Quieter. No confidence left to perform. The judge reviewed the evidence without emotion. And for the first time, Vanessa wasn't controlling the room. She glanced at me once, searching for something: anger, regret, mercy. I gave her nothing. Because the truth didn't need help anymore. And neither did I. The courtroom didn't feel dramatic. There were no gasps, no raised voices, no cinematic moments. Just paperwork, measured tones, and a judge who had clearly seen enough human behavior to know when a story didn't add up. Vanessa sat at the opposite table, shoulders slumped, eyes rimmed red, her attorney whispering explanations she no longer seemed to believe. The confident woman who once juggled lies like props on a stage was gone. In her place sat someone stripped of narrative, exposed to facts that refused to bend. The judge reviewed the exhibit slowly. Financial records. Location data. Hotel receipts. Messages that contradicted sworn statements. Patterns that showed intention instead of accident. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but unmistakably final. "This court does not look favorably on prolonged deception," he said. "Especially when it is supported by documentation and corroborated timelines." Vanessa's attorney attempted a pivot: emotional strain, confusion, loss of direction, but the judge stopped him with a raised hand. Marital dissatisfaction is not justification for calculated dishonesty. I didn't look at Vanessa. I didn't need to. The sound of pages turning was enough. The ruling favored me decisively. Asset division reflected documented contributions. No spousal support. No leverage left to negotiate. The house remained mine. The savings remained intact. The illusion she'd built collapsed neatly under legal weight. When it was over, Vanessa didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just stared at the table like she was seeing it for the first time. Outside the courthouse, her attorney spoke quietly with her before leaving. She stood alone for a long moment, then walked toward me. "Josh," she said, voice hollow. I waited. "I never thought you'd actually look." There it was. Not regret. Not apology. Just surprise. "I trusted you," she added, as if that explained everything. "No," I said gently. "You used trust because you thought it meant blindness." She swallowed. "I didn't plan for it to end like this." "I did," I replied. "The moment I stopped pretending." She nodded once, like someone acknowledging a loss they couldn't appeal. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into a parking lot full of strangers who knew nothing about her story, and never would. That was the last time we spoke. The months that followed were quiet, but not empty. Quiet in the way a room feels after a storm passes, cleared, breathable, real. I sold the furniture we'd chosen together and replaced it piece by piece with things I actually liked. The walls stayed the same color, but the house felt different. Lighter. Samuel's life unraveled faster than Vanessa's. His firing turned into blacklisting. Construction circles are smaller than people think, and reputations move quickly. His divorce finalized without ceremony. He moved out of state shortly after. No goodbye. No announcement. Just absence. Vanessa tried to rebuild, but lies don't make good foundations. Employers hesitated. Friendships cooled. Stories conflicted. Eventually, people stopped asking questions, and that silence told her more than confrontation ever could. I heard about her through mutual acquaintances at first. Then less often. Then not at all. And that was fine. I focused on work. Took on larger projects. Negotiated contracts with a clarity I hadn't known before. It turns out living without doubt sharpens everything else. A year later, I ran into Jessica at a grocery store. She apologized again, though she'd never owed me one. "She said you were controlling," Jessica admitted quietly. I never believed it, but I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. "I understand," I said. And I did. Trust isn't weakness. Blind trust is. I started dating again slowly. Not because I was lonely, but because I was finally honest with myself about what I deserved. Transparency stopped feeling like a request and started feeling like a requirement. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about how close I came to never knowing the truth. How easy it would have been to keep believing the camping stories, the group chats, the carefully rehearsed smiles. Ignorance would have been comfortable. But comfort built on lies always charges interest. What I learned isn't about marriage or betrayal or even infidelity. It's about paying attention. About respecting quiet instincts before they start screaming. About understanding that dignity isn't defended through confrontation, it's protected through preparation. Vanessa taught me how convincing a performance can be. She also taught me that the truth doesn't need drama to win. It just needs time and patience. The house is quiet tonight. Honest quiet. The kind that doesn't hide anything. And I wouldn't trade it for any story that isn't real. Before you go, if my story made you think, helped you see something more clearly, or reminded you to trust your instincts, support the channel, leave a comment sharing where you're watching from, and let others find stories that prove the truth always has a way of surfacing.